Our nation's exploding deficit will surely be on the minds of many voters during this fall's midterm elections. And now a number of lawmakers on Capitol Hill are introducing something called the HELP Act. It's an acronym for Honest Expenditure Limitation Program. And our next guest introduced it. Oklahoma Senator James Inhofe is a Republican. And we're very pleased to have you, sir. Thanks very much for being here. In 30 seconds or less, tell us what the HELP Act is all about.
Well, what I did is take the reductions that Obama said that he was going to do. Remember, he said he would freeze spending, discretionary spending, at the 2010 levels. Well, big deal. This is after he's already increased them in 1 year by 20%. So what I'm doing, Rick, is winding it back. Instead of freezing it at 2010 levels, freeze the non-defense discretionary spending at 2008 levels. That starts off 20% less. Now, what that will do will actually make almost $1 trillion at the end of that 10-year budget cycle. And so many people are all wrapped up in this thing about earmarks. You got to keep in mind, and here I am, I was rated last week as the most conservative member of the United States Senate, and I'm here to tell you that earmarks don't save a penny. All you do if you kill an earmark or an appropriation is send that to the White House. So if you really want to reduce some, join this thing. And by the way, I introduced it 3 or 4 days ago.
Yeah. What kind of support are you getting?
The first 15 minutes, we had 32 co-sponsors.
Let me ask you about earmarks. You bring it up. One of your colleagues in the Senate, John McCain, said you've got to define earmarks, and that is an unauthorized appropriation. He says if you authorize it, even if you disagree with it, that's the right process. But what earmarks have done is totally circumvent what we should be doing, and that is authorizing and then appropriating. What do you think about that?
I heard that because that's my definition, not Senator McCain's, and I'm glad that he's finally caught on. They were always talking about authorizing and appropriating. Well, those are two processes. I'm on an authorization committee. If you authorize it first, that means it's gone through the vetting process, things like platforms for our military and all of that. Then you appropriate it. But if you go down to the floor and they're appropriating something that has not been authorized, that's where they're swapping out the deal. But here, Rick, you're only talking about just almost no money. The big money is in the rest. That's 1.5% of discretionary spending. I want to go after 98.5% of discretionary spending.
But, sir, doesn't it all add up? I mean, doesn't it all add up? I mean, earmark after earmark after earmark. Pretty soon you're talking about a lot of money. And I think that there might be some people out there a bit confused to hear you talking about cutting spending while not talking about putting a ban on earmarks.
Well, no, it's very important, Rick, very important to understand. When you eliminate an earmark, it doesn't save a penny. It just sends that to the executive. That's the President of the United States. And that's why so many Democrats now are wanting to go ahead and jump on this thing, eliminating earmarks. That'll do nothing but send that money to the President. We went through this in 2007 when we only passed 2 out of 12 appropriation bills, and that caused it to go into, all of that money went into the President. That was George Bush at that time. 100% of that money that year went to the 5 largest cities in America. So if you eliminate an earmark, it doesn't save a cent. It merely sends that to the President.
Let me ask you about spending. We all talk about how spending is out of control. People don't like it, but they do like the services that the government spending actually pays for. And it just seems, I think, to a lot of people out there that there's nobody in Washington, with all due respect, sir, who's got the guts to stand up and say, you know what, all those programs that you love, all those programs that we get to send back to our districts, we can't have them anymore. We can't afford them.
Well, our constitutional responsibility under Article 1, Section 9 is Congress, the Senate and the House, are supposed to be doing the authorizing and the appropriating. Now, if you say that you want to eliminate earmarks, that means that we cede that authority to the President. Yeah, we have a lot of things that we want. I'm for a lot of the EDA programs. I'm for, certainly, we need to do something about infrastructure in America. I'm the one who put the amendment on the stimulus bill, the first one that came along, to try to do something about using that money to build roads and bridges and highways, put people to work. This president used it for social engineering. I think we all know that, and that doesn't stimulate anything.
I hate to look back. I'm the kind of guy who likes to look forward, but I've got to ask you while you're here, because this deficit spending is really nothing new. Were you fighting against all of this stuff during the Bush administration?
Yeah, but let's clarify this, Rick, because you asked that question, and people will assume that the Bush administration was doing the same thing. The Bush administration, since they were negotiating two wars with a bled-down military they inherited from Clinton, in the last 6 years, if you add up all the deficits from the Bush administration, it was less than the deficit that came out of the first budget of Barack Obama. 6 times of his deficit was 6 times, or the 6 years, last years of the Bush administration.
Well, the war funding, as I understand it, now goes into the budget, whereas it did not happen that way during the Bush administration. And I'm not here to defend either one of those presidents, the past or the current. But I've got to ask you, because it seems like right now folks are really fed up with members of both parties, that there is a real push for all incumbents to get them out of here. And I'm just wondering, you've got 4 years or so, I believe, until you're up for re-election, sir. But in this current climate, unless things really change, do you feel vulnerable?
I don't feel at all vulnerable, because most of the people who really decide in my state of Oklahoma who to vote for, they vote for conservatives. I was ranked by the National Journal last week as the most conservative member of the United States Senate. I can assure you, my state of Oklahoma doesn't want to get rid of someone with that record.
Jim Inhofe is a Republican from the great state of Oklahoma, and we're so glad you came on to talk to us today. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you, Rick.